Most investors own nowhere near enough gold and silver to make a difference. And the number that financial advisors have been recommending for decades? It just got thrown out the window by one of Wall Street's most powerful voices. The amount you think you need is probably wrong. And what's about to happen in 2026 makes this question more urgent than it's been in 50 years. Picture this, September 2025. Morgan Stanley, one of the most conservative investment banks on the planet, makes an announcement that sends shockwaves through the financial world. Their chief investment officer doesn't just recommend owning gold. He recommends replacing half your bond allocation with it, 20% of your entire portfolio, in gold. This is the same institution that spent decades telling people to put 5%, maybe 10% max, into precious metals. The same Wall Street that treated gold like a fringe investment for paranoid preppers and conspiracy theorists. Suddenly, they're saying bonds, the supposed safe haven for generations of retirees, have lost their status. And gold deserves to sit right alongside stocks as a core holding. Even institutional money managers were shocked because they understood what this really meant. When Morgan Stanley tells wealthy clients to put 20% of their money into gold, they're not predicting a crisis. They're acknowledging one that's already here. For as long as most of us can remember, financial advisors have given the same advice. 5 to 10% in precious metals, maybe 15% if you're really conservative. The rest goes into the traditional 60-40 split. 60% stocks, 40% bonds. This allocation has been gospel for decades. It survived the dot-com bubble. It survived the 2008 financial crisis. It became the foundation of every retirement account, every pension fund, every endowment portfolio in America. The logic was simple. Stocks give you growth. Bonds give you stability. Gold is just insurance. A small position to protect against catastrophe. You own it hoping you never need it. But that playbook was written for a different world. A world where governments didn't print money by the trillions. A world where national debt wasn't measured in percentages that would make banana republics nervous. Because here's the part your financial advisor probably hasn't told you yet. Behind closed doors, something fundamental has changed. Central banks, the institutions that actually run the global financial system, have been making a statement with their actions. And it's the opposite of what they're saying in public. In 2025 alone, central banks bought over 634 tons of gold. That's the third consecutive year of purchases exceeding 1,000 tons. For context, before 2022, annual central bank buying averaged 400 to 500 tons. They've more than doubled their accumulation rate. Poland increased their target gold allocation from 20% to 30% of reserves. They're not done buying, they made that clear. The scale and pace depend on market conditions, but the direction is set. China has been adding to reserves for 18 consecutive months through mid-2025. And most analysts believe their actual purchases are substantially higher than what they're reporting. Turkey, India, Kazakhstan, Bulgaria. Countries across the political spectrum, from emerging markets to developed economies, all moving in the same direction. Away from paper promises and toward physical metal. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you look at what these central banks are doing versus what they're telling the public, there's a massive disconnect. They're buying gold at record levels while simultaneously assuring everyone that fiat currencies are stable and trustworthy. It's like watching someone install 10 fire extinguishers in their house while insisting there's no fire risk. Either they know something, or they're wasting a lot of money. And central banks don't waste money. This wasn't a fringe bet. This was institutional money saying bonds are broken. Traditional diversification is dead. And gold needs to be a pillar, not a footnote. The harsh truth? Your 5% allocation made sense when bonds worked, when inflation was controlled. When governments had fiscal discipline, that world is gone. And most retail investors are still investing like it exists. It's like watching someone juggle knives while insisting they're pool noodles. Sure, everything's fine. Until it's not. But the craziest part is still coming. Because the question isn't just how much to own. It's why most people who think they're prepared actually aren't. Let's talk about what enough actually means. Because this is where most people get it completely wrong. If you have a $200,000 portfolio and you own 5% in precious metals, that's $10,000. Sounds like a lot, right? Except when the stock market drops 30%, you've just lost $60,000 from your equity holdings. Your 10,000 in gold, even if it doubles, gets you to 20,000. You're still down 40,000. This is the mistake almost everyone makes. They think of precious metals as a profit center, something that's supposed to go up and make them rich. But that's not what gold and silver are for. They're insurance with a unique property. When everything else is on fire, they don't just hold value. They often increase in purchasing power. Not because gold became more valuable, because everything else became less valuable. Here's a practical framework. Think about your monthly expenses, rent or mortgage, food, utilities, insurance, healthcare, transportation. Let's say that's $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year. Now ask yourself, if you lost your job and the economy tanked simultaneously, how long could you survive? The traditional answer is 6 months of expenses in cash. That's $30,000 sitting in a savings account, earning essentially nothing while inflation eats it alive. But what if that $30,000 was in physical precious metals instead? You have the same liquidity. You can sell gold and silver whenever you need to. But now you're also protected against currency debasement, against bank failures, against frozen accounts or capital controls. This is where the allocation question becomes personal. How much do you need to actually make a material difference to your life? Because here's the thing. No one ever regretted having too much insurance when disaster struck. They only regretted not having enough. Let's break this down by investor profile. If you're in your 20s or 30s, you have time to recover from mistakes. You can afford to take risks. Most experts say 5 to 8% for younger investors. But that's assuming the system doesn't fundamentally break. If you think we're headed for a currency crisis, even young investors should consider 10 to 15%. If you're in your 40s or 50s, you're in peak earning years but approaching retirement. This is when most people have the most to lose. The traditional recommendation is 10 to 15%. But given current risks, 15 to 20% is starting to look more reasonable. You want growth, but you also need protection. If you're retired or approaching retirement, wealth preservation becomes the priority. 15 to 20% minimum. Some conservative advisors are now saying up to 25%. Because if the market crashes when you're 70, you don't have decades to recover. And here's something most people don't consider. The allocation isn't just about total portfolio percentage. It's about the gold to silver ratio within that allocation. Right now, the gold to silver ratio is sitting around 80 to 85 to 1. That means it takes 85 ounces of silver to equal 1 ounce of gold. The historical average is 60 to 70. Silver is undervalued relative to gold by about 25 to 40%. Most experts recommend 70% gold, 30% silver. Gold gives you stability and recognition. Every bank, every government, every institution recognizes gold. Silver is more volatile but has industrial demand that gold doesn't. Solar panels, electric vehicles, electronics. The green energy transition is consuming silver at unprecedented rates. Some aggressive investors are going 60-40 or even 50-50 on gold-silver. The logic is that silver has more upside when the ratio normalizes. But it also has more downside if industrial demand collapses in a recession. This is when you realize your allocation isn't just about percentages. It's about survival. It's about having options when everyone else is trapped. It's about the difference between weathering the storm and getting swept away. Look at the economic landscape for 2026. Recession risk is hovering around 30 to 42% depending on which analyst you ask. That's not normal. In a healthy economy, recession risk is around 15%. Inflation isn't dead, it's dormant. Tariffs are pushing prices higher. Immigration restrictions are creating labor shortages that drive wages up, which feeds into prices. The deficit is 6 to 7% and climbing. National debt is at levels that would have been considered catastrophic 2 decades ago. Central banks can't fight high inflation and slowing growth at the same time. If they raise rates, they kill the economy. If they cut rates, they reignite inflation. They're trapped between two bad options. This is the environment where precious metals shine. Not because they go up, because everything else goes down harder. If money could scream, this is the moment it would be begging you to pay attention. Because the decisions you make in the next few months could determine whether you are financially comfortable or financially devastated over the next few years. But here's the detail everyone ignores. And this is the part that separates people who preserve wealth from people who lose everything. The real question isn't just how much to own. It's how to own it. You can own gold through ETFs. Paper gold, it's convenient. It's liquid. You can buy and sell with a click. But in a real crisis, when banks are failing and markets are frozen, paper gold is just another promise, another claim on something you don't actually possess. Physical gold and silver mean you hold it, you control it. No counterparty risk, no bank can freeze it, no government can easily confiscate it with a keystroke. It's yours in a way that numbers on a screen can never be. The hybrid approach is what most wealthy investors do. 70% physical for true ownership and crisis protection. 30% ETFs for liquidity and easy rebalancing. You get the security of actual metal plus the flexibility of paper, but here's what most people miss. Owning gold and silver isn't a set-it-and-forget-it strategy. You need to rebalance. When precious metals surge and suddenly represent 25% of your portfolio instead of 15%, you take profits. You sell some and buy stocks while they're cheaper. When precious metals get hammered and drop to 8% of your portfolio, you buy more. You're rebalancing away from what's expensive toward what's cheap. This is how professional money managers actually use gold and silver. Not as a buy and hold forever position, but as a dynamic allocation that shifts with market conditions. Review quarterly. Rebalance when your allocation drifts 5% or more from target. If your target is 15% and precious metals drop to 10 or rise to 20, that's your signal. This minimizes transaction costs while maintaining discipline. And there's one more factor nobody talks about: the psychological impact of ownership. When you own physical gold and silver, when you can hold it in your hands, it changes how you think about risk. You stop checking stock prices every day. You stop panicking when the market drops, because you know you have a foundation that exists outside the system. This peace of mind has value that can't be measured in percentage returns. It's the ability to sleep at night knowing that no matter what happens to banks, to governments, to currencies, you have something real. Something that's been money for 5,000 years and will still be money when today's problems are ancient history. Your cost of living, your ability to retire, your financial security, all of it is being shaped right now by decisions governments made years ago. Every round of money printing, every bailout, every deficit-financed spending spree diluted the value of your cash savings. This event, this moment in monetary history, impacts your life whether you're paying attention or not. The inflation you're experiencing isn't temporary. It's structural. It's baked into a system that requires constant expansion or collapse. Finance isn't about numbers in a spreadsheet. It's about understanding that money is a human invention, a collective agreement. And that agreement is under more stress than at any point since the 1970s. Money isn't the problem. The problem is trusting institutions that have repeatedly shown they'll sacrifice savers to protect debtors. That'll print currency to paper over mistakes. That'll bail out the connected while letting everyone else suffer the consequences. Every crisis teaches the same lesson. The people who own hard assets, who understand the difference between money and currency, who prepare before disaster rather than during it, those are the people who survive. Everyone else learns an expensive lesson about the difference between what they thought they owned and what they actually controlled. So how much gold and silver is actually enough for 2026? If you're young and aggressive, 5 to 8% minimum. 10 to 15 if you're paying attention to what central banks are doing rather than what they're saying. If you're middle-aged and building wealth, 10 to 15% minimum. 15 to 20 if you understand that the traditional 60-40 portfolio died with zero interest rates and infinite money printing. If you're retired or approaching retirement, 15 to 20% minimum. 25% if wealth preservation matters more than maximum returns. And remember, those percentages mean nothing if you don't actually own enough to matter. $10,000 in gold sounds impressive until you realize it covers 2 months of expenses. Make sure your allocation is large enough to make a material difference to your life. The next crisis isn't coming, it's already here. It's just moving in slow motion. Inflation that won't die. Debt that can't be repaid. Political dysfunction that can't be resolved. These aren't temporary problems. They're features of the system we're living in. The question isn't whether you should own gold and silver. It's whether you own enough to actually protect yourself when the slow-motion crisis accelerates. And if you think this story is crazy, wait until you see what happens when the dollar loses its reserve currency status. Because that process has already started, and most Americans have no idea what's coming. If you found this valuable, smash that like button and subscribe to Ignoverse. We break down the financial realities they don't teach in school, the economic forces reshaping your world, and the strategies that separate those who preserve wealth from those who watch it evaporate. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.